What's up, y'all? This is your boy John, and today's episode of Geeks From The Multiverse, we're going to be talking about G.I. Joe. And Transformers, Robots in Disguise. So we're going to be talking about some of the animated shows, some of the movies that I've come out with, kind of talking about some of the characters today. We're going to be doing basically a 3-part series to this, so stay tuned. G.I. Joe, real American hero. Transformers, robots in disguise.
I don't know what the hell you're doing.
No, I thought you and I just talked about this right before
the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, okay. All right, boys and girls. Anyways, so again, it's your boy John, and with me as always is Matt.
What's up, everybody? I don't know what that is. I apologize.
Actually, my bad. I'm sorry. This is Jaywin, and this is Matt. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, guys, so today we're going to be talking about basically the characters of both TV shows / movies and everything else. Because, G.I. Joe has had a history just like Transformers. It's interesting that these two basically, entities have had their own kind of like basically smash ups between the both of them. Like, they're supposed to be in the same universe in a sense, but it's like, when you're looking at it, it's not like they talk about each other at all, and they're kind of different in their own rights. But like, you start looking at some of these characters though. I mean, I know we looked a lot really at the G.I. Joe side more than the, Transformers, but I know both of them have like an extraneous amount of characters that I could literally spend all day. It would take like a day or two to describe some of these people. And it is crazy because, in the original like animated show though, I've been watching a little bit of it because, I remember as a kid, I mean, granted, I wasn't growing up in the 80s, man. Okay. I'm just letting you know now. No, but I do remember, my dad actually bought, it was a DVD collection of G.I. Joes. Excuse me. And, it was interesting because you'd sit there and watch it, and then it was like, watching that 80s cartoon, and you're like, wow, this is actually really cool. You're watching it, and you're like, man, I said, why can't we have this nowadays? Especially that style and like, how, we were just watching an episode together, and we're just like, G.I. Joe, and we're just like getting into it. Yeah. And then, Transformers, it's like Transformers, robots in disguise, and you're just like really getting into it. And it's like, most TV shows nowadays don't even like give you that cool theme song and that little like both the animated movies we were watching. Like, I kid you not, if you haven't seen at least the G.I. Joe one, it is the funniest thing. Right in the beginning, all you hear is Cobra, Cobra, and you're hearing it. It's like a high pitched, and you're like, what the hell's going on right now? I mean,
it's so much more epic than the regular season, the regular animated show theme. Because they, it is more elaborate that they do. But like when you get to Transformers, the movie,
oh my God.
I mean, it's a whole 80s
montage.
Montage with like guitars and drums and like the epic, like hair metal, 80s theme,
I mean, literally, Matt, it was so impressive. Like to me, it reminded me of like, it's kind of like, it's like Billy Crystal. Who did like the exercise videos back in the day? I don't think it was Billy Crystal. It might have been somebody else, but like that's what it reminded me of. Like in the beginning,
sweating to the oldies.
You're like, oh yeah, okay. Like that's what it at first. I mean, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was just more like you're getting into it. You're kind of like really getting pumped up, and you're like, yeah, I really want to be a Transformers now.
That's it, because it starts with the drums, and then but once those 80s guitars start coming in, and it's like Transformers, you're like, oh, this is going somewhere, and
you're like, yeah, robots in disguise, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. You're like, I want to be a Transformers now. And you're like, well, I can't really change my body. I mean, that would be cool, but it's not really going to happen. But, it's crazy. Let's start with this, Matt. When you look at both TV shows, okay, or really movies, or just really the entities, which one were you more of a fan of? Like back in the day, like when you first was looking at this? Because I know you said because we talked about how like, when we talked about 80s and 90s cartoons, things like that, you did mention both of these. But I really want to know which one was like your personal like go-to.
I think I would have to probably go with Transformers. Because I
Okay.
think to me, Transformers was different. It wasn't just, I mean, granted, there were people, in the animated show, but Transformers was something different. Like it was actual, living robots doing things that, robots didn't do. I mean, you're talking the 80s, like there weren't a thing as, you know, robots that transformed into cars and guns and these different things. And, where G.I. Joe was awesome. I mean, it's a really awesome like animated show. And I could tell you right now, like I had a ton of GI Joes. I had the Cobra Commander base. Like I had a lot of the toys. I mean, I had a lot of the vehicles, the toys, like the stupid little rocket things that you met. Once you shot it off, you lost the stupid thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
no, I know what you're saying.
and I had a lot of. I don't remember having a lot of Transformers toys per se, but I think to me, Transformers was probably one of my favorites. But for me, I mean, growing up in two different, generations,
Well, right, yeah.
um, GI Joe, Transformers, you know, animated shows like this. Obviously, we called them more cartoons when we were younger, but animated shows like this and like Thundercats and Voltron, these things were all on before school started. They were all on like Sunday, like early Sunday morning. Like they started very, very early and went almost up to lunchtime. All of these animated shows. So we would get up before school, watch them all, and go to school. Like Saturday mornings, we would get up, like watch all of these, cartoons, like all back to back to back. So I mean, they were all on like pretty much following each other. So GI Joe was right next to Transformers, and then they'll go right into Voltron, and yeah.
No, I mean, the reason why I was asking is because, like, you know, I know growing up, right, in two different eras, I mean, we're talking about cartoons that are different in that sense. I mean, it's funny, though, because I think it was you that really kind of enlightened me more about well, I would also say you, my dad, a little bit, too. Transformers was, I didn't realize, like, at first, like, yes, it was an actual, like, animated show back in the day. G.I. Joe was something that, yes, my brother and I actually, like I said, we had a DVD collection. Technically, it was his, it wasn't mine, but like, I'd watch it with him and of course, he had G.I. Joes, and it was kind of like, to me, like at the time, G.I. Joes was like, if you were playing with, basically, if you're a girl, right, and you're playing Barbies, right? It's the same thing. And for us, it's like, all right, give me your G.I. Joes, and we're going to, basically play pretend, and we're like, okay, we're going to go and do our thing, but
Yeah.
that was the same idea. And so, I remember watching it and I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, this is a great TV show, whatever. And, we would watch it for hours and we would do it. And so, the biggest thing that I will say too is, I mean, granted, I didn't quite do the whole, waking up all the mornings. I mean, granted, it was different eras, different things, but, I do remember watching like, Hanna-Barbera and like, watching the cartoons that would just come on all the time. And everyone's like, I think it was when I was older, they're like, why are you watching this shit? And I'm like, you're a grown man. I'm like, I'm going to be a kid at goddamn heart. That's who I am. Like, I want to make sure that my kid is going to watch up growing, like, basically growing up to like these cartoons.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, when I was younger, Looney Tunes were still on TV.
No,
And
right.
It was like one of those things like you would watch for hours, and it was, not just Bugs Bunny and, Daffy Duck and like all those characters, but like the ones that I really enjoyed were like the stupid ones that had no characters in it. It was like the, products of tomorrow, and they showed all these like wacky things.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But G.I. Joe, Transformers, Voltron, like all these shows were on, pretty much back to back, like all the time. But like I said, I think Transformers for me was kind of the go-to because it was different than most of the other, shows that were on. I mean, you have G.I. Joe, that's people. You have, Voltron, which was kind of the same idea, but different. But you have, Thundercats, which is, again, people. So you have shows that are based around people, and then you have, the show that's about these robots that can be cars, and they're, robots at the same time, and they're, fighting these other, evil robots that are, and it's more, to me, it was more entertaining.
No, I mean, like I said, I agree. I mean, I can see why, looking at both, like you're like, okay, you want that little different taste. I mean, I will say that, yeah, of course, I'd say for me, because now granted, if I knew about it, probably, and if I started watching maybe the more of the animated, I might say the same thing. But like, because I really only knew more about the GI Joe kind of series, but at that time frame, of course, I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, this is great. It's like it's an amazing TV show. I mean, shit. I mean, just for shits and giggles, man. I mean, literally, you should be proud of me. I mean, literally, I've been catching up on all the things that we're going to be talking about later on. Like, we already talked about Godzilla. Like, I already watched all that. I already watched, like, Planet of the Apes, the new stuff. Like, yeah, I was like, Matt, you got to be proud of me. You got to be proud of me, Dad. You got to be proud of the fact that I'm trying to catch up. And, like, one of the things that I was doing now was, like, watching more of the G.I. Joe kind of side of it, just because, I'm not saying, like, I know, of course, with the movies and stuff like that, you do get to know the characters. I understand there's a lot more in the animated show, and I get that. And all the animated shows that were after it. But like, G.I. Joe was one of those things that you and I even talked about. It was like, you only really get the shows because the movies that you see nowadays, holy shit. Like that is the worst rendition of what G.I. Joe should be.
Yeah, no, they fucked the whole thing up.
And it's like, I don't see it being, like I said, I mean, you and I just sat there for a little bit trying to figure out who half these characters were. Cause I was like, I know these people, but like, I don't know.
I haven't watched an actual G.I. Joe in so friggin' long, but
I mean, how long are we talking? Like over 20 years, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a long time, but
no, it's okay.
Kind of getting into the characters, and with G.I. Joe in particular, it was one of those animated shows that they didn't actually start with the animated show. It was actually, the show started with the toys that were made, which I think the toys were actually, somewhere around the 60s, if I had to be correct.
Well, I mean, that's kind of when, like, the whole Mattel, like, Barbie, when Barbie, basically once plastic figurines, in a sense, like these dolls or whatever you really want to call them, like, that's when I would say 60s, 70s is really when it started to, be a thing, and then that's when they started to really capitalize.
1964, and they were like the kind of the big 12-inch, more realistic looking action figures. So sort of like, I guess your Barbies are, similar.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing. It's like, you're looking at how, well, hold on, Matt, because we got to be technical here. Women will call them dolls. Men, we call them, what do we call them, Matt?
Well, I mean, they are sort of dollish looking.
No, I know, but what do we call them?
For men, they are action figures, because we would not play with dolls. Boys play with action figures.
Right, but it's funny because now if you think about it, let's say roles were reversed, right? So when you look at a female playing with, let's say, action figures, oh, you're just playing with your dolls. But we use that word as a connotation, as like that's feminine, as dolls can be feminine, and then action figures for us is it's very masculine. It's very you know what I'm saying? Like, but that I'm just saying.
And what's funny is like Hasbro, when they actually did make these figures, never actually used the word doll when they made them. They actually called them G.I. Joe action figures.
So that's their ploy. So that was their way of like getting at least little boys in this case to like, oh yeah, Dad, Mom, I want to get these toys,
So it was kind of like America's movable fighting men. That was kind of their ploy to get boys to play with them, even though they're, kind of in that same category as Barbie, because they're very similar in the way that they're made.
No, I mean, I get that. I mean, like when you look at a Barbie versus a G.I. Joe in this case, they have very similar, like, the like accessories and things like that. I mean, granted, you're going to have Barbies as more, like purses and dogs and, whatever, like the Barbie dream house, like you talk about those things, but like you talk about G.I. Joe, it's like, okay, well now you get, you can, let's say, remove their head and put it on another head, or let's say they have an M16 or, they have a tank and they have, a base. And it's like, you get more technical with all this other stuff.
Right.
But like, you look at, G.I. Joe though, right, as a whole, I think, especially the characters, man, I will say, when you and I looked at these characters, I kept looking all of them and I'm like,
well, there's
they have some weird, no, there were some weird ass names. What was it? Ice Cream Man or Ice Creams, whatever the hell it was. And he was a flamethrower trooper. Like,
I mean, yeah,
like somebody random like that. Like
there's so many in there, I mean, you have a random character that's a driver. She's a driver. And her name is Cover Girl, probably because she's good looking.
Oh, you mean the blonde that we saw?
I think she might be different, but I mean, the one that I think that you're most shocked by was Snow Job.
Hey, well, I didn't want to go there. You said it, not me. You said it. No, but again, never mind, guys. We're not gonna go there. But like, again, there was just some names that I was just like, oh, okay. But like, I'm gonna kind of jump around with the characters though for a second. So like, one of the most kind of more iconic, I would say, G.I. Joe characters that I think, even if you weren't, let's say, a G.I. Joe fan, I think you would know because of, let's say, wrestling, especially if you were wrestling back in the days.
Right.
So you're looking at Sergeant Slaughter. Okay. So like, now granted, you and I have talked about like the differences and so on and so forth. I understand they're using his persona in a sense and his way of, his talking a little bit, like his actual outfit, things like that. So if you don't know who Sergeant Slaughter is, I mean, like granted in the 80s and I would say what, 70s, 80s? Because I don't think he was big in the 90s, but I know he was definitely big in the 80s.
More probably. I mean, I probably went in the 70s, but more, I guess, probably in the 80s.
But like he was a big time WWE wrestler. Like he just personified. Like it was just one of those people that you just knew he was coming around the corner. Like and like you could hear his voice, you hear that iconic, presence. Like that was him in a sense. But like, when you hear him in the TV show, yes, he was more of like a R. Lee Hermie, like kind of person, like, that drill instructor, kind of attitude, having the, like, I'm going to beat you up, soldier, like get in your face kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And it was just, again, if you know what I'm talking about, I would say hopefully most guys would know what I'm talking about, but women, I would say if you haven't listened to him, maybe just kind of look at him, whatever, or just kind of hear what he does. But like, he's just an interesting dude. He's like, but again, he's a very iconic kind of character in G.I. Joe because, when you see him like wrestling and then you see him like, whoa, that's cool, man. Like I didn't realize that would be like similar in a sense.
Yeah. And I mean, the character in G.I. Joe makes no, he doesn't make any reference to professional wrestling. I guess, even though in the show, he does do some wrestling moves.
Yeah.
But he doesn't make any references to, being a professional wrestler or, having, professional wrestling experience or anything like that. So, I mean, Sergeant Slaughter, the person who is Robert Rudolph Remus, like that's actually the guy's name, was simply the model and the voice for the character. But the character is a complete, G.I. Joe character. Like he's a separate character from who the
wrestler really
is. Yeah.
But I will say one more thing, Matt, is like, I think, and it's kind of weird about his character too. I don't know if it is, I can't remember exactly, but I swore that he fought like an alligator. Like in the either show or, I mean, definitely not in real life, but I think in the show he fought some kind of animal and he was like, oh, okay, I'll beat you up or whatever. And I'm sitting there like, who in their right mind is like, I'm just going to beat up an alligator or something. I don't know. And maybe I'm just imagining it. I swore that maybe in like one of the episodes or something like that he actually fought like an animal or something. I don't know exactly how true that is, but like this dude is like, I would say he's a little psychotic in some ways.
I mean, it's possible. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe like I said, maybe I'm just making it up.
In the show, I mean, Sergeant Slaughter's a very tough guy, and he in the movie, the G.I. Joe movie, I believe he leads like a either the Renegades or the Marauders. It's like one of those two groups where they send one of the Joes to train with Sergeant Slaughter to.
Oh yeah, okay,
yeah.
Yep. I mean, granted, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that is the case. But like, kind of, I mean, we've kind of dived into like Sergeant Slaughter here, but like, looking at I would say kind of the main, well, I can't say main because there's a lot of, I would say main characters down the road.
It was the Renegades.
It was the
And
Renegades.
they sent Falcon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like, so this is where I couldn't remember, but like, so your main guy of G.I. Joe, okay, you're really your top dog in a sense. His name's Hawk. Okay, he's the missile commander. He's the guy that, is really in charge of the Joes in a sense, which, little fun fact, if nobody knew this, which I didn't really know until Matt kind of pointed this out to me while he was doing a little research here. I didn't realize they all had ranks in particularly because it made sense because I'm like, well, then I'm also trying to figure out the branch of service that they're majority in. And little fun fact, a lot of them are Army, which I figured because now the only thing that didn't make any sense to me personally, and this is why I told Matt this, a lot of them are flying planes. A lot of them are like driving boats. A lot of them are doing a lot of the stuff. And I'm sitting there like, so like, for example, right? So Hawk is an 06. Okay. So he would be a colonel, a full bird colonel in the Army, which makes sense. Okay. Now Duke, okay, I want to mention him. So he's your second in command right next to Hawk. Okay. Which in a sense, we're talking, like I would say in a military formation, like, you usually have a commander and you usually have like your enlisted higher ranking person, right? So in this case, he's a first sergeant, which, okay, makes sense to a degree. Okay. What doesn't make sense to me is how is this man flying a plane? And I will tell you in real military experience, okay, you need to be an officer with actual pilot training. But Matt even agreed that there was this one person that jumps right into a damn airplane and just takes off.
It does list him as an E8, but I mean
that doesn't mean shit, man. What I'm saying is there's no reason why he should know that pilot.
Yeah, training. I mean, and I think that was what Lady J that did that.
Lady
J. She literally jumped in a jet, closed the hatch, and the thing just took right off. Like no preparation, no checking the gauges, no making sure the thing was fueled.
I was going to say
no calling to the tower to see if she was clear. Like it was just.
Now I'm thinking about it. This was actually
she just started the key and took right off.
So the best part is technically G.I. Joe started well before Top Gun ever came out because I can tell you that if you look at Top Gun and you look at this show, it's like they don't even matter. Nothing matters in this case. But like what I'm trying to say is, boys and girls, is that with the ranks and certain things, I just don't see how some like Hawk, that makes sense. He can fly an airplane. Got it. Cool. Not a problem. Not a problem in my case. Duke, unless he had some special permission to learn how to fly a plane and, do other things, and maybe like, I would say land vehicles like driving tanks, things like that. Maybe I could see you can have some experience in doing that. Flying a helicopter, a plane, something a little bit more airborne. You're not going to do that as an enlisted soldier, plain and simple. Like it's not going to happen unless maybe, just maybe, unless you had some like civilian experience or whatever, which could be the case. But all I'm saying is if we're just basing it off military experience, it doesn't make any sense to me. That's all I'm going to say. But anyways, so we got Hawk, we got Duke, and then we got this guy named Doc, who's a medic.
It does say, I mean, kind of going back, not to dwell on Duke at all, but it does say in the background, and I know that these are fictional people.
No, I get it. They're fictional.
They're not real, but it does say in his background that he is airborne infantry.
That doesn't mean he can fly an airplane.
So, I mean, it doesn't mean that he can fly an airplane, but
that just means he can jump out of a plane and he does it while in the air. Because that's literally airborne infantry. That means he's a grunt. Is what he is, and basically he jumps out of airplanes for a living. That doesn't mean he can fly them. That's why I said unless he does like a civilian kind of experience in that sense, like that's the only way he's gonna be able to do that. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Matt. Is like civilian experience. That's all that's gonna matter because
I'm just trying to fight for my man Duke over here.
I understand you're trying to fight. Hold on,
I'm trying to fight for my man here.
I know you're trying to fight for your man Duke, but the problem is Duke in the movie, Channing Tatum, did a horrible job at it. But that's all I'm gonna say about it. For right now.
I mean.
You want to fight? You want to fight for him? Then you got to.
I'm just saying, Channing Tatum. I mean, of course, it's going to be bad.
Look, there are certain Channing Tatum things that he does pretty well in, but there's just that one did not do him.
It wasn't Duke.
It was not Duke. It was not even close to being Duke. But anyways,
no, it wasn't Duke at all.
Moving on to Doc. Okay, so this guy, we literally just saw him in one of the episodes. I didn't even know who the hell he was until all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, that's Doc," and I'm like, Oh, okay. Didn't realize that. But apparently, where was he from, Matt? And what did he do?
He was actually born in Massachusetts and went to he parked a car in the Harvard Yard.
And he got his his law degree. Here, let me try that again. He got his doctorate degree in good old medicine. And I'm just sitting there like, wait a minute.
He's an 03.
He's a captain.
Yeah.
He's a captain, but then, like, it's crazy to me that, finally, some of the rankings, like, it actually makes sense in how they do it.
Right.
But like, if he wasn't an 03, I would have been like, why? No, you need to be an officer, my friend. You can't just be a doc and just call yourself a medic. And it doesn't work like that. And then we again, there's not everybody's on here because, like I said, it would take days.
Yeah. There's so many. I think beyond Sergeant Slaughter, I think he is a well-known, but I don't think he's as well-known as this guy, John.
I think you're going to mention Snake Eyes, if I'm not mistaken.
I am going to mention Snake Eyes, and I think probably if you haven't ever heard of G.I. Joe, you've probably heard of Snake Eyes.
So Snake Eyes, if you don't know, is basically this guy in a black suit, okay? Doesn't talk. Basically, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember his wolf's name, but like I know so an interesting little fact, G.I. Joe, for some reason, there are some characters that have actual, companions. So Shipwreck, for example, has a parrot that he talks with. Junkyard has a dog named Mutt, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe the Junkyard is the dog. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Junkyard is the person, Mutt is the dog. But like, and then you got Spirit, and I'm pretty sure he's a Native American who tracks people. Go figure. And basically, he has a eagle named Freedom, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, again, certain G.I. Joes have certain companions. And so Snake Eyes has a wolf, which I cannot remember the wolf's name. But he has basically the wolf is just, it kind of like, he's very cool. It's very like him. It's weird. Like some of the companions for these dudes, and actually now I'm thinking about it, there's no women that have like companions. It's only the dudes that do it, which is kind of funny about that. But like Shipwreck, it kind of matches their personality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like has a talking parrot and just like cracks jokes and does all that stuff. And it's just the same thing of what Shipwreck would do. So it's kind of like their take on like their outer expressionism. I don't know. Like they're just like personified as them, but just as a companion. But anyways, when you look at Snake Eyes though, right? He's got a black suit. He's got a black, his eyes are kind of remind me of like Stunner Shades. You know what I'm saying? Like that little slits in between, and then like where his eyes basically go.
Yeah.
And basically he has katanas, and
his wolf's name is Timber, by the way.
Was it Timber?
Yeah.
Okay. So Snake Eyes he's a very, he's very badass because he Shipwreck will literally, I remember one episode, he was just talking with him. He's just like talking basically narrative to him. And he's like basically having a conversation with himself because Snake Eyes doesn't talk or do anything. He's basically a man of action. That is really what Snake Eyes does.
So a lot of what Snake Eyes, his bio is classified. Even when you look him up, sometimes Wikipedia isn't always accurate, but even when you look him up on certain sites and other things, like people will make shit up and they'll just say whatever. But a lot of like what is listed is like his birthplace, his actual name, like things are listed as just classified because they never really created a persona other than Snake Eyes.
But hold on, I know Matt's got a little fun fact for you, which I didn't know about Snake Eyes.
Well, the very first thing I'll say is like what is said is that one of the first missions for G.I. Joe, his face was severely disfigured in a helicopter explosion. And then it says that he had extensive plastic surgery to repair the damage, but the vocal cords couldn't be repaired. So that's why pretty much he wears the baklava with the visor that covers his face. But when he is out of the uniform, which we don't see because we're only seeing when they're on a mission, because that's what the animated show is, he is shown to be a white man with an athletic build, blonde hair, and blue eyes.
And I never would have known that because I would have been like, man, he could be any race, any color, any whatever. And all of a sudden he's just a white dude with blue eyes. And it's like, Didn't think that was going to be Snake Eyes, but that's just who he is, apparently. You know,
apparently.
But so Roadblock. I know he's not I would say he's not, well, I know in the movie he's portrayed by Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But in the show, I think he's from the South, if I'm not mistaken. But like he's basically a gunner. Like he's
in the show, he talks a lot by riddles, right? I mean,
he's like, yeah, man, I tell you, I can't remember how the hell he sounds like, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
everything's like a rhyme, like everything, like
he's like word to the wise. I don't know. It just flows. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but yeah, he just basically talks in like a limerick or like a rhyme or something that's like really quick witted, clever.
Word to the wise, I'm going with Snake Eyes. Like
yeah, you're like, oh, how you doing? Huh?
Like he always has these like weird like things that he says, but whenever you hear him talking, like it's always rhyming.
Yeah, but it actually makes sense. But no, it makes sense in the situation that they're in. Yeah. And so I'm like, how are you making this up on the fly, boy? Like, you know, it's like, it's kind of reminds me of like, if you go down south and you're hearing those like old, like jazz guys, they're like, hey, how you doing, man? You're like, yeah, word to the wise, you know, like, you got to be here by sunrise if you want to get a good deal, my friend. Or, I don't know, like something stupid like that. Like, it just reminds me of that quick-wittedness, you know, that cleverness.
And he's heavy weapons, and his weapon that he usually will carry is an M2 Browning machine gun.
Which we haven't used those in a very, very long time. That's all I'm going to say. Because now we use an M249.
You're talking 1980.
No, I understand. I understand. I'm just saying we haven't used them in a while because we have M249 now. But anyways, then you got...
one of our favorites, I think, Gung Ho, right?
Yes, Gung Ho. Yeah, so this guy, okay, so just to describe you to him, he's your typical, like, Marine vet. Okay, I'm just gonna say it, like an old school Marine vet.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, when you get when you get the Marine logo
literally
tattooed on your chest.
But the worst part is this, right? So he like, because you'll see him and you're like, wow, okay. And it, like what Matt just said is like he has the Marine logo on his chest, not even colored in. It is just stenciled, and it's just the outline of it. And I'm just like, what the hell? What did you do, man? He's like, well, I just wanted to get the logo, and I'm like, you didn't want to color it in, maybe. You know, shade it in, a little green, whatever. No, but like, so like he's a jungle warfare expert. You know, he does grenade launchers, knives. So basically, he's like I mean, I guess he doesn't quite sound like Rambo, but like, I mean, it would be reminding me of like Rambo, but like without the hair. And
yeah, I mean, it's like his name. Like Gung Ho. He just
goes.
I mean, he's the guy that like you tell him like we have to go over there and
like, I'm gonna blow shit up. Let's go.
He's already halfway there.
He's like, what did you even talk about? He's like, I don't know.
Like, you didn't even take a weapon or nothing. He's just like
fuck that shit. Let's go.
I'm going. Yeah, that's just what he does. You know.
And then you got like, you know, I know we didn't mention her, but like you got Lady. So there are some females. Okay, it's not just all men. You know, we got Lady J. And you might have to pull her up, but I'll talk about Scarlet for a second. But like, you know, Scarlet is, you know, she's counterintelligence. She usually carries a crossbow. You know, she's, again, literally her name is also the hair color she is red, you know. And again, a lot of G.I. Joe characters' names, they just, they either make it up based on what they do or personally what they look like. And it's like, okay, well, then that's how we're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what do we got about Lady J here?
You know, Lady J was born at Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts.
No shit. Everyone's going to Mass all of a sudden, but all right.
But she is a Staff Sergeant E6. So
I'm pretty sure Scarlet is like an E4 or E5, I think. She's not really like high ranking, but
yeah, but she is airborne and Ranger qualified, expert with an M16, M911, A1 auto pistol, and the reflex crossbow, which is her weapon of choice. She is an accomplished actress and fluent in several languages and has a knack for impersonation right down to the subject's voice and mannerisms.
Okay, well, she's very well talented. I mean, Scarlet is not even close to being like that, apparently. But like, you know, when you're looking at Lady J and, you know, Scarlet, you know, those two, like when you look at the show, they're two totally different personalities. Scarlet likes to hang out with Duke. Lady J really likes to hang out with, you know, this is weird because this is where I'm going to say this. Okay, so Duke is hanging out with basically, I think, like an E5. Realistically, in a military standard, they ain't going to fly. That is too commanding. No, hold on a second. So then you got Lady J, who's an E6, hanging out with an 06 full bird colonel, okay? And I mean, there's some tense moments between these two. I know that they look like they want to hook up. They want to do something. But I'm like, you're an O6 and she's an E6. All I'm going to say is, unless you were married prior to, that shit gonna fly. You want to talk about getting kicked out? That shit would kick you out real quick.
Well, she was also in a relationship with Flint,
which is also a warrant officer, which doesn't really help either.
No, that doesn't really help either because, I mean, depending on what level, warrant officer that he was at, that he was.
No. It don't matter whether you're a W01 or a fucking W05 or a CW5. It don't matter what fucking rank. If you're an officer playing a tipple and you're enlisted, that shit don't fly. That shit, unless you were married prior to, the only way it works is unless you were married prior to, that is the only way you two would have a relationship. Unless you want to get caught. Oh yeah, guess what? I'm going to tell you, shit don't fly because you would be kicked out. And you know who gets blamed? I'll say it. I don't care. I'm gonna throw people out. Enlisted get kicked out more than the officers do. Typically, I'm not saying that it doesn't flip flop, but usually the officers get the little slap on the wrist. No big deal. Oh yeah, trust me. I know how this game works, but I'm not going any further than that. But anyways, you're looking at the characters, you're looking at how their creativity, the names and stuff. That's where it gets me. I'm like, you could have thought of some better names for some of these people.
Oh yeah, I mean, they definitely could have found names, but a lot of times, what's interesting is, yes, they have certain personalities or the weapons they use, the experience they have, or the jobs that they do, which often dictates the code name that they have. Like, you look at Hawk, I mean, he often is flying all the time.
Yeah, which, again, makes sense because he's an officer. Now, when you look at Duke, it don't make sense. Because, like I told you, unless he had some civilian training, just like any one of these guys. Because Lady J got into a jet and literally just took off, and she's an E6. I'm going to tell you, they don't fly. Like, if I was doing that, it wouldn't have flown. I would have been screwed unless I had training.
I can't tell you anything about that, but
I'm just saying.
I mean, the names obviously are code names because Lady J is not what her name is. This is what they call her. But when you look at some of the Joes, I mean, Gung Ho is obviously a code name because that's what his personality is. Like, he's always, whenever there's a fight, that's where he's at. Like, he is 100% there. So a lot of the code names, that's why they have them. Spirit, it might be a little bit on the racist side.
You don't say, man.
I'm just saying there, Spirit being an Indian, it might be a little bit racist there.
Yeah, but it's fine because this is back in the 80s because nobody cares.
But what's cool about it, though, is yes, they have these code names, and yes, they might be a little on the racist side, or, you have these women that have really Scarlet or,
Cover girl,
but what's cool about it too is they have military ranks and backgrounds and an actual history.
No, I mean, that part was cool.
Up and it's really, really cool to be like, oh yeah, Duke has been trained in special forces. He's had special forces training, and
that's what it was.
He's done all this training, and he was born here, and he's gone to Vietnam, and he's done all this
back in Nam, I tell you. But yeah,
but you can see the histories, and you can see all this, and it's not just a surface level oh yeah, Duke is I
mean, they had to do a lot of backgrounds. I mean, you're talking about creating a TV show like this. I mean, they literally went through everything. But a little fun fact, I know we're going to jump into hopefully Cobra here in a second. Lady J, let's put it this way. Now, I know you said she was airborne/ranger qualified. Okay.
That's what I said.
All right. I'm going to tell you something. It wasn't only until recently that there was only 2 women that I believe in the military now, currently. They were actually ranger qualified. Pretty sure it was ranger qualified. All I'm going to say is, Matt, that's pretty damn impressive back in the 80s to have a woman that is ranger qualified, especially during that time. Now, granted, I understand it's fictional. I'm just saying. I just thought it was interesting.
That's what G.I. Joe is about.
He's like, we're just throwing it out there. And then the one thing before we go on to the Cobra thing, I know you and I kind of briefly talked about it, but I know Reagan had a lot of, is campaigning a little bit. Because I know G.I. Joe really had, in their commercials, right? And I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but like in their commercials, it was like it was kind of a tool for his administration during that time.
Yeah,
To kinda,
we get more into that on the
I'm sorry.
on the next episode because we're talking more about the animated show.
Okay, fair enough. fair enough.
So we do talk more about like their little PSAs and
Okay, well,
knowing is half the battle.
Okay, fine. I guess we won't jump in there. Sorry. So never mind. I guess we'll just jump into Cobra then.
Well, we got Cobra, and then we got a whole Transformers
Oh, I know. We got plenty to do.
crew to talk about. So going on the Cobra side, obviously we got probably the most known Cobra Commander,
As you would know.
and he is actually the leader and founder of Cobra, which is quite surprising when you look at the rest of this. Some of the other people. His face is mostly hidden throughout the whole every season. His face is hidden. Either with a hood or sometimes like he's seen like kind of with this, I guess like silver mask that he kind of wears. The concealment was said to be used to hide his inhuman disfigurement. And then it was discovered later it was to maintain the secret of his civilian identity.
Yeah, what's funny about that? Basically, you know how I know if you ever heard about this, there's this like giant conspiracy theory that instead of like, I don't know what it is about celebrities in particular, but they like to basically say that like certain celebrities like Beyonce, so whatever, some high level, whatever, that apparently they're part of the Illuminati. Okay. They say that they're lizard people. Or
Lizard people,
like,
yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of like that, but like Cobra Commander
Except Cobra Commander was a lizard person.
like an actual lizard person just hiding his
Yeah.
civilian identity.
And that's what he was actually later on in the series. He was revealed to be an agent from a race of reptilian serpent people known as Cobra Law.
And what would be really funny is that if this was actually a real thing, especially because if there is a theory based in real life that, you got a lot of celebrities being like, oh, well, because I mean, I'm not saying that it couldn't happen because I've seen some videos of like people like changing their basically eyes in it really quickly, but it looks like reptile. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying.
But I mean, Cobra was kind of the main guy. He had this really like high pitched, squeaky ass voice. He's
like Cobra. It was very high. Like, trust me, like when you hear him, you're like, ugh. Like, why do I want to listen to him? Like, trust me, who in their right mind, like literally almost every other character, I'm like, why would you want to listen to this guy? This guy, I'd probably jump off his head in 2 seconds.
Very high pitch and distorted. But he was the main player with Cobra. And I would say his number 2 would easily be either Destro or Baroness.
I would say it's probably more Destro.
I think it goes back and forth. I mean, Destro definitely was a complainer.
Oh my God, he was the most giant whiner complainer I've ever met because literally all years like, why didn't you tell me about the weapons that you're using today? And
I want to know about your plan, Cobra Commander.
And then Cobra's like, just wait and see, Destro. And you're like, just wait and see. And he's like,
you need to tell me about your plan now.
Like, shut the fuck up. I'm like,
but he was always depicted, kind of with this metal, not really a mask, but it was really just a face. Like his whole face was metal. And then later on I think maybe I don't know if it was in the animated show or if it was in the comic books, his face became gold and not silver.
I think it might have been in the comics because I can tell you, even in the movie, like you saw Destro for a second and it was pretty much silver.
Yeah. Like in the movies, it was just like, it was kind of like this weird silver.
I don't even remember. Like you're talking about like the new movies and stuff. I don't even remember. That's the problem. Like I honestly don't remember because
it was later on. Baroness is the director of intelligence. She was kind of this Russian Natasha.
Yeah, basically, you know what? You're right. It would be like a Natasha Romanoff, like kind of like scenario.
I think her name is actually Natasha, but
please don't tell me it's the same one.
Destro is the weapon supplier, and then of course you have Dr. Mindbender. He's the chief of science. He is basically a mad scientist who creates several, different mind control devices. He does a lot of genetic manipulation in the series.
Well, you also forgot he created someone else on the very top of that list too.
Oh, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. But he's kind of like he kind of almost looks like who's the Navy guy?
Oh, the Navy guy. Are you talking about Shipwreck?
On the G.I. Joe?
Shipwreck?
Yeah, he kind of almost looks like a built Shipwreck, but with the little monocle, and he's like,
you know who
he's kind of crazy.
I mean, the one I remember, if I can remember this correctly, you know what it reminds me of is more like, you ever seen those like 1920s like boxing like kind of guys?
Yes,
like very built like that, and then has this like giant curly Q mustache in a sense.
But even though he's like super,
like a built,
he's like super built. He runs from every single fight.
He's like, "I'll get you next time," you know. Like, no, but the one thing I find it interesting, of course, is like it's that, like I said, the 1920-esque kind of thing. But like, of course, he has to have a damn monocle. Like it's the monocle. But I understand. But the whole like, you know,
he's a
evil scientist.
He's a scientist. He has to have the monocle. I mean,
he's like, oh, evil Dr. Mindbender. You know,
don't all scientists in the 80s have monocles? Come on.
Okay, then why don't you name a couple? Oh wait, hold on. If you're talking about evil, well, I wouldn't say evil scientist, but mad scientist. You're talking about Doc Brown. I don't remember him having a goddamn monocle. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't create Doc Brown though. So.
I'm just saying.
All right. So the next couple are twins. They're the Crimson Guard co-leaders. They were kind of the corporate face of Cobra. I don't think anybody remembered what their freaking name were.
Oh, I couldn't remember for the life of me who
but their names are Tomax and Zammot.
Yeah, basically the opposite of each other.
They were twins. They had like this really epic haircut. They all had this like scar on.
No,
on
actually, I'm pretty sure only one of them had a scar.
I think they both did.
I think I only saw one of them did. But
either way,
the one interesting fact though, which I know I'm going to steal it just for a second, is that if one of them got hurt, the other one feels the damn same pain. So if one of them's falling, guess what? The other one's going, oh, and he's gonna fall with them. So these two were.
It wasn't just what they felt. Like they would often, like when one started talking, the other finished.
No, I know, and they had that little kinetic.
Yeah, so they had this like kind of twin ability to sense each other and what they were thinking and feeling. So,
but yeah,
that was what they did all the time in the show. Like one would start talking, and then all of a sudden the other would finish.
No, I know, but like it was stupid because like if one of them is falling off a building, the other one's like, ugh! And he joins right with them, and it's like, okay, like that's just how it is. I don't know. It's just that's the way they did it.
Storm Shadow, which is kind of the opposite of Snake Eyes. He was the ninja bodyguard in Cobra. He's trained in martial arts assassin. Kind of did the dirty work, I guess, for Cobra.
I mean, he basically it was like, and you could see it like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow had like a history between the two. Yeah, and they've had a long history, well prior to all this stuff.
He does eventually. Storm Shadow does eventually become a G.I. Joe. Eventually,
right? But I'm just saying, like those two had a. Yeah, I would actually another one that apparently Storm Shadow had a history, or at least a tense battle with, was Spirit. You know, I don't know why, but Spirit and him apparently had some kind of feud going on too. I don't know.
Zartan is a big player in G.I. Joe. He was leader of the Dreadnoks. He's a master spy and he's assassin. This guy was like the master of disguise, would literally morph into an exact physical form of somebody else. So you never really knew who he was when he did this.
It kind of reminded me of like Chameleon in like the Spider-Man kind of like universe. Like that's the same kind of like esque of what he was kind of meant to be in a sense. You know, but like it's interesting though, like his, you know, the Dreadnoks, right? So these guys, they're all Australian. Okay, and they're all basically their famous thing is they always love. I don't know why, but they're always on a like if you're on a goddamn building and you're riding an ATV and you're like, no, and you're flying like literally. I remember one episode they were on a building. There's the three of them, which I know they all have their names, and you'll mention them maybe. But they all just literally go whoa, and they land perfectly, and they go and they start circling. That's their famous thing is they like to circle around like their enemies and stuff, and they'll like start shooting you or whatever. So I'm sitting there like, how are you doing this without a ramp, without anything? Like I don't know, man. But like I said,
it's an animated show. They do they do it.
I was like, man, the physics in this doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You would have been dead. I'm just saying. But like these guys. Basically, they're Australian. They just, I don't know. They're knuckleheads. I mean, that's just the best way to put it.
But Zartan, I mean, he's one of the more serious Cobra villains.
Yeah, I mean,
only because like when he does take on that physical form of somebody, like you really don't know if he's that person or if he's Zartan, and he will, many times he's infiltrated the GI Joe, base,
Yeah.
and it's, stolen, passwords or data or whatever.
So I would say Zartan and the Dreadnoks and like Storm Shadow, those are your grunts. Basically, everybody else, like Dr. Mindbender, Tomax, Xmont, or whatever, Destro, all them, like those are the behind the scenes guy. Maybe Destro occasionally will jump into play, maybe Baroness, but like some of these guys, they just like Tomax and them, like no, they don't do shit. Or maybe they might help fight a little bit.
No, I mean,
but barely.
The twins are really just the corporate face. I mean, every time I've seen them in an episode,
they don't do shit.
Yeah, they don't really do anything. But I think the other, big player, and he's the Emperor of Cobra. He was actually created by cloning from Dr. Mindbender.
Uh-huh.
And the process that was used was he extracted DNA from the remains of other military leaders, which included Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, Attila the Hun, Alexander the Great, Hannibal, and Genghis Khan.
And I would assume that Cobra Commander was another DNA extraction. But
he wasn't on the list, but they basically wanted the DNA of kind of all like the ruthless military leaders kind of in one person so that he could eventually take over Cobra and they can get rid of kind of Cobra Commander. Basically.
Right down the road. But yeah, I don't think that turns out very well.
No, I mean, with Cobra Commander being, that agent from Cobra Law, it's really different because now Serpentor is kind of a cloned being, not really somebody that's from Cobra Law.
Right.
And Cobra was really meant for that Cobra Law, like terrorist group. So,
yeah, no, I mean, and that was the thing. Unless they knew that they were technically serving a lizard man, then like they would have never known about all this stuff. But
all right, so let's. I guess we'll have to quickly get through some Transformers, which they're, I think they're equally as interesting, but they have a duality because they can transform into things.
Well, and that's probably the more interesting part about, the Autobots versus like Decepticons, like piece of it, because you notice that the Autobots usually are more cars in this case, and then the Decepticons are more like aircraft, or they usually have like a more of a bigger aspect. I don't know.
And you won't see anything newer than a 1980 something in these because
no, right. But like if you're talking about movies, that it's different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with the Autobots, you're gonna know Optimus Prime.
Yes, I mean, when you look at a big rig and you see that like blue, red, again having that Autobot symbol right in the front of his like grill, having. I mean, I don't even know what else to describe. Like literally, when you look at him, you're like, "Yep, that's him."
Yep,
and I know that's it.
So he's leader of the Autobots, and Optimus Prime isn't actually, and I don't have his actual name. It's Orion something.
Well, because he becomes Optimus Prime because of Cybertron.
He takes on the role of a Prime, which is basically a figurehead of the ruling council that governs Cybertron, which is their planet. So each Prime is chosen by an artifact called the Matrix of Leadership.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, like they were originally going to go with Megatron before he became crazy and went ballistic in the way he did in Cybertron. But like originally, that's a little fun fact that Megatron was supposed to.
And then he kind of went off the rails when they chose. Which his name at the time was Orion, and I forget the back part of it, but they had chose him over Megatron, and then that's where that Cybertron
basically war
started. But Optimus Prime gets the Matrix of Leadership, and it's a powerful object that holds the memories and the wisdom of previous leaders who have wielded it in the past. So that's basically what it does. I would say probably his closest, next closest person is Bumblebee, which is
But he's not
very
really
well known.
Well, he's very well known, but he's also not really his second. Like he's not really his second in command. But I do know what you're saying. Like
Not like in command, but like his like closest like ally, the one that he
I would say
would
closest
trust
friend.
the most. Yeah. In the animated show, he was a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle.
in the movie or newer stuff, I mean, he was technically was it a Dodge? Or no, he was a Camaro. He was a Chevy Camaro.
Yeah, he was a Camaro in the movies.
Yep.
But in the show, he was kind of a messenger, a scout, and a spy. Then you have Cliff Jumper. He was a 1980 Porsche 924. He was the fact that I have here is he was one of the fastest Autobots.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you got like Jazz, which is technically I love how you say this one is his right hand man. I don't know
because I think Jazz was one that he would send more on the more dangerous missions.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, but it just I don't know. It's kind of hard to say that. I don't think me personally, like I don't think Optimus really had a right hand.
I think it was whatever mission.
I think dictated
because when you look at the Autobots, it's really like G.I. Joe. Like if the mission called for gung ho to do, to just get in there and fight, then that's what he would do. But if that's not what like Duke or Hawk needed,
right?
If they needed somebody who was more like of a hacker electronics, you wouldn't be sending gung ho.
No, you definitely you'd be destroying that shit and be like, get it.
You wouldn't send. So Transformers was the same. If you needed somebody to take on a dangerous mission, I mean, he was equipped with a photon rifle, a flamethrower, and then a full spectrum beacon, 180 decibel stereo speakers that could create this kind of dazzling and disorienting sound and light show.
Which that's why the name Jazz and all that stuff. But hold on, I did find this interesting though, and I just thought about it. So when you look at the Autobots and Decepticons, right? So I would say that Decepticons, right? When you look at Megatron, like his right hand man, I know we're gonna go into him eventually, but like his right hand man is Starscream, and I know it is because like that is like it's apparent, like because those two fight all the damn time. But look at especially in GI Joes, right? I understand that Baroness is kind of like there. I honestly say that Cobra Commander and Destro, those two are those are really the top dogs in a sense, because like that's the same thing with Megatron and Starscream, because Starscream is he's annoying just as much, but like he's really his like go-to guy that he'll always be there. Okay, Starscream, go do.
Well, I think Starscream and Destro have the same kind of like personality where, Destro would want to replace Cobra Commander as leader of Cobra.
And I know that technically, if I'm not mistaken.
And Starscream does too.
Oh no, Starscream wants to become basically the leader of the Decepticons. I mean, he's even said it. I do remember that. He even said, I'm going to be it, and then whatever. But I know that that's for future stuff. But so like, okay, sideswipe. So in 1982.
A Lamborghini Countach. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm surprised this isn't the fastest goddamn car. But so, what is this? Arms act as a powerful pile drivers, flies for up to 2 minutes with a rocket backpack, fires flares visible for 18 miles. Okay. So, I mean, that's kind of,
he has his, I mean, like I said, each one of these have their particular roles and their strengths, Well, with Ratchet, he was a 1980 Nissan Vanette. If you don't know what a Vanette is, look it up because it's a stupid ass 1980s van.
No, but it says an ambulance.
Right, and that's what they used for ambulances in the 1980s.
Are you shitting me? They used a Nissan.
It's a basic 1980s Nissan van
that they used as a goddamn ambulance.
That was basically an ambulance, and he, could repair basically anything. He could make anything. But the thing for Ratchet was he liked to party and give back talk. He could do the job as well as anybody, but at the end of the day, like he loved to party. So he would often get distracted. But he was the one, like whenever any of the Autobots like had something going on mechanically, like he would go in there and just,
Hey,
you're all set. Like,
So I know, like, for example, the next one, even though this is kind of funny how this one is a 1980s Nissan Vanette again, just not the ambulance part of this, but so Ironhide. Okay, so I just think it's interesting that, I know of him because I'm pretty sure in the movies that he is like, again, he's definitely not a goddamn van, but like, yes, he's basically the bodyguard to Optimus Prime. Usually is the one that's, guarding all the important things, and I get that. It's just interesting, like I said, because Bumblebee, in a sense, even though, like Optimus looks at him as a good friend and everything else, and, he does protect him in a sense. I mean, if he's around, he'll make sure that he's there. But I would say Bumblebee and really Ironhide are like the two that generally protect Optimus in a sense. I'm not saying that the others don't, but I would say those two in particular because they usually are close to him.
right. And there's a whole lot more of the Autobots and Decepticons. We're just kind of reading the main ones. Smokescreen, it's a Datsun. He's a fucking Datsun. 280ZX Turbo, which is basically if you ever see a 1980s Datsun, it's your basic model Datsun. God. It's nothing special, but I mean, in the cartoon, like you don't really know what they are, but a lot what his job was to lead the enemy astray, sneaking around. He was one of the most trusted of the Autobots. In his car mode, he would emit this thick smoke that would attract to the metal, which was exactly what his namesake was.
No, it kind of reminds me if you're looking at like a Honda Civic, like an older one, and it just like,
Well, I mean, it's a Datsun, so that's probably why it emitted smoke, because he couldn't help it.
No, and that's what it would just remind me of. That's all I'm saying.
So in robot mode, he shoots missiles which wreak havoc on enemy aircraft, radar, and guidance systems. An electro disruptor rifle that shorts out electrical targets.
Which is literally every one of them, but that's fine.
Which is pretty much all of them, yeah.
It's pretty much every single one of them.
So, Decepticons.
So this one is interesting. A Walther P-38.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, in my opinion, that reminds me of a pistol, like a Walther, like a pistol Walther. But I don't really know, unless this is like an old school. We're talking. Like
I mean, if a Walther P-38 shot a laser blast.
I guess I got to look it up. No, go ahead. Keep going. But this is Megatron. If you didn't know.
He was leader of the Decepticons. He started the war because he was refused the title of Prime, and basically decided to wage war on Cybertron. And that's exactly what he looks like when he's a gun.
And hold on a minute. So you're telling me he's an actual pistol?
He turns into a pistol. Yes, he physically turns into a pistol. But the thing with the pistol is whether a human was holding the pistol, or another Decepticon was holding the pistol, or if he just transformed and shot himself.
No, I'm just going to say this. This is
he could basically, the gun that he transformed into could change sizes.
Okay.
To fit the holder. But he didn't need a holder to shoot the gun.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm just whatever. I guess I have more questions than anything else, but go ahead. We'll go on.
That's what it says that he was. He was a Walther P-38. I don't know what to tell you, John.
I just think it's very interesting, but go ahead.
It is very interesting, yes. Especially being in, the 80s, being a Walther P-38, whatever. The one that I think I love the most, and I actually had this one. I know that I had this one because I had the stupid little cassette Transformers, which was Soundwave.
Oh.
And Soundwave was one of Megatron's most loyal soldiers. And if you don't know who Soundwave is, when he transformed into a boombox.
Apparently, he was a micro cassette recorder, which is that kind of...
Well, I mean, in the show, he looked like a boombox, but...
I mean, I'm just telling you what you wrote. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know. Like, okay, I'm going to show you something real quick. This is what I know you guys can't see it, unfortunately, but this is exactly what apparently Megatron, back in the day, now I want to zoom in for a second. Look at a couple things down in the lower region. What is
Oh,
that?
I see that. Yes.
Okay. Okay. No. Like,
No. Well,
I just don't get it. Anyways, it just.
But yes, he was a micro cassette recorder, but he looked like a boombox, and basically what he could do is like he could hear anything and use it for blackmail to advance his status. He could read minds by monitoring like electrical brain impulses of other Autobots or Decepticons. He often acts as a radio link for the other Decepticons. He does a lot of kind of the communications, I would say. But the thing that with Soundwave that was really special was he had these 3 microcassettes that he held on his chest. And he would open the tape deck and he would call out, either Laserbeak, Rumble, or Ravage, and they each had a different function.
Of course, he has 3 mini Decepticons inside of him. That's great.
He does, yeah. And they're, they, like I said, they all have their different.
Clearly, I got to watch the animated show. I need to seriously watch it, especially the Decepticons, because this is absolutely mind blowing to me. Especially what. I would have thought Megatron would have been in like a vehicle or something like that. No. We're talking about a goddamn pistol. Again, mind blown. Definitely did not expect that. And then, of course, Soundwave being a boombox in a sense. Just saying.
So, yeah, Laserbeak was more of like a hunter. So he would kind of hunt prey. He obviously had laser cannons on his beak. That's
the Laserbeak, yeah.
Ravage.
I guess was scavenged.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of just a scavenger, would kind of walk and try to find things. And what was the last one?
Rumble. Good old Rumble. I guess he likes to rumble and tumble. Likes to beat the shit out of people.
It says he transmits immense low frequency ground waves to create powerful earthquakes.
Okay.
So I think I actually think I did see an episode with him where they were trying to create energon cubes by overloading the Hoover Dam's power.
Oh,
I think it was some kind of a dam, but they're trying to overload the power so that they can get more energy to power the cubes so that they could make more Decepticons. And this Rumble basically went into the water on the other side of the dam and was creating those earthquakes that was creating a tidal wave.
Huh.
So that's
interesting.
That's how they used
him. Okay.
But Soundwave had this very like kind of radio-ish sounding like Autobots transform. Like he had this like very like.
So we're not talking like the transatlantic. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like the old school radio kind of voice. Like, hello, boys and girls. We're gonna talk to you today.
No. It was very like.
Or was it like robotic?
It was very like robotic and electronic the way that it sounded, but it was like, Soundwave coming. It was very like.
Okay, so like your typical '80s robot and that kind of sounding. Yeah. Okay.
Shockwave was a laser pistol.
Oh, no surprise
how
there.
about that? Cold, brutal, scientific approach to war, loyal to Megatron, obviously. He was left in charge of Cybertron when Megatron left. Laser gun can emit lethal beams of energy from anywhere on the electromagnetic spectrum. So gamma rays, X-rays, light, infrared rays, radio waves.
So basically, if you really wanted to use Shockwave against the Hulk, for example, you basically would just be pissing him off and actually creating him to more stronger Hulk in a sense. But okay,
and apparently he can fly in laser gun or robot mode. Could you imagine
how do you? No, but this is my point, guys. Like, why do you say like Megatron's a legit pistol from like basically World War II? You got another guy who's a goddamn boombox. Then you got a laser pistol who could apparently fly anywhere he goes.
Well, I mean, Skywarp and Starscream were both 1975 F-15s.
But that makes sense. Like Starscream was an actual like F-15, like that. But again, an actual airplane or like a Sonic. Okay, my point is like that makes sense. Okay.
the difference between the two of them, yeah, Starscream was second in command. He was more loyal to Megatron, even though he wanted to take over. Starscream obviously was more ruthless, cold-blooded, very treacherous. Skywarp, nah, he was loyal to Megatron, but he was kind of dumb. I mean, he was the dumbass in the group, even though it says that he could fly at speeds of 1,500 miles per hour and could teleport.
Now that's insane, but I mean that's just like I said. That's why I'm saying Starscream was like his literal right hand man.
Skywarp did some dumb shit.
Of course, he was a dumbass. He was just a dumbass in the group.
He messed things up a lot. But like we said with G.I. Joe, like these characters have a duality that G.I. Joe doesn't have, and it's their ability to transform into, vehicles or other objects. Like you said, I mean, Autobots typically were vehicles. Like Ratchet was an ambulance.
That's my point. Like when you're looking at Autobots, like yes, they're all vehicles, they're all this and that. Usually more land based, but like I know with, like I said, Decepticons, they were more. It was like tanks. It was more armor / like aircraft or something like that. It was more like, again, more extreme versions of basically a regular car, which literally every one of those Autobots were a car. Like I said, I'm just very surprised. To the 2 guns, 1 boombox, and 2 basically F-15s in a sense. And I'm just like, but again, so I can only imagine this giant. Like again, I really need to watch it because I can only imagine this giant pistol basically turning, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not just a small pistol that you could just pick up with your hands. No, we're talking like an actual giant pistol that just apparently, just walks around and it's no big deal. Like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different Decepticons. I mean, but in the movie, you actually had one that transformed into a freaking camera.
No, right. But those are like the smaller ones and whatever. And there was one that, one of them was like an AI. Remember? And I think it was in the second movie. It was when Witwicky when he was like in college, and then he was thinking that it was a girl he randomly hooked up with, but it was actually a robot, and it was a Decepticon in like disguise. But I just was like, but that's clever to me. You know what I mean? Like if you're transforming into that, versus like some of the stuff. That's all.
Talking about wikis, there were actually 2 notable humans in the show.
Really? In the actual animated show?
Which were wikis.
Oh, really? So they did actually, that's good. I'm actually glad that they went back.
In the show, there was a Sparkplug Witwicky and a Spike Witwicky.
Okay, who the hell's Sparkplug?
So, Sparkplug Witwicky was the father of Spike. Pretty much, Spike is the one that helps the Autobots fight the Decepticons.
Okay.
His father is Sparkplug, is basically a mechanic.
Okay, that makes sense.
They get helped by the Autobots, so they in turn help them. But Spike is the one that really kind of.
I mean, I guess does it kind of like follow the whole? Like I don't know if it's like down the road or not, but like this is where it'd be interesting if like the TV show was like somehow correlated with the actual movies a little bit, because like if you had Sam, right? Because like then you could say, okay, well Spike was, let's say Sam's like grandfather or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It's just more of a random thing. But I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I don't think that they're linked because, in the movie, the grandfather or great grandfather or whatever was like a explorer or something.
No, right. I mean, I know he had like a purpose and stuff. I think it is. I think it just is kind of interesting that they use the last name Witwicky. So I'm glad that they kept to that kind of trueness about it. Right. So bringing it forward, it just sucks because like after the whole Witwicky thing, with Sam and all that, they just drop him completely, and then they go basically with Mark Wahlberg, and then I don't know who the hell else was there, but it's just
I mean, there's others that are, I mean, it's basically like farmers and canoers, and like there's a random guy named Joe that they help. There's random like humans that they help, but those 2 are really just kind of the main people. Somehow they list Frankenstein, so they must help Dr. Frankenstein in here somewhere.
They have to go back in time, but okay.
But I mean, there's random people in here, and I mean, obviously, you know, when we talk more about like the animated show and the movies, there's a whole there's a whole Marvel comic book series where, you know, Transformers and GI Joe are teamed together to stop Cobra and the Decepticons.
I mean, I think it'd be now. This is just me personally. You know, I don't know. I can't remember who exactly owns like the movie rights. I know Hasbro technically, but I'm talking about like the actual production team or whatever, the production company that owns both of them together that can distribute it. Because I don't know. Because like if we're talking about like the Marvel, because like I understand Marvel had a comic book series for both of these. You know, you would think. Now, granted, you would think that maybe Disney could theoretically do it. But if they don't own the rights to them, then it's kind of hard to, you know, get this concept into play, because I would love to see if they could do that, if they felt, you know, true to what they did in the past. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, the way they did Transformers moving forward.
From what I believe, Hasbro owns both of them.
But that's the thing. Like, but who, you know, created
Hasbro?
Right. Okay, we're going to try this again. It wasn't a Hasbro production.
No, because they don't create movies; they create toys.
No,
so
I know that they both. I understand.
They commissioned.
Right? Who do they? I guess commission. If we're going to be technical,
whatever studio they hire. I don't know.
I was just curious because I couldn't remember if it was like Fox or if it was like, you know, Warner Brothers or whatever. Like I don't know, because if depending on where it landed, right now, because if it's Fox, guess what? Disney could do it. If not, then it's like Warner Brothers, and you're like, well, okay, what do we do?
I mean, technically, I think because they do have a comic book series, I don't find it very difficult where, you know, Marvel Comics wouldn't have a role in pitching to Hasbro to be like, hey, you know, we want to make a movie linking the two of them. I mean, they've already pretty much done that with Rise of the Beast.
No, I know that, but that's the problem. Like, if they were going to be smart about the whole damn thing, because like we already know about Transformers, and it's done really well. The series as a whole has done really well for the most part. Not saying all the Transformers movies are great, but you know, there's definitely a few of them that I'm like, yep, that's amazing. That's great. They have a great storyline. They have all this stuff. The issue that I have is like when you, like I said, look at G.I. Joe in the newer stuff, they honestly, if anything, they need to stop. They need to take a step back and let like Marvel or somebody that actually knows what the fuck they're doing, to a degree. I want to say to a degree, because I'm not saying they know everything, but they do know enough to basically revamp a series and make it at least true to their story.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that keeps coming up is like one, Hasbro is the owner of both franchises. But
no, I know.
From what I understand right now, they are working pretty closely with Paramount.
Which is, all right. Well, yeah, Paramount is basically excluded from both Disney and...
So that's what I can see, and it makes sense because that's where most of the, I mean, pretty much all of the Transformer movies are currently right now.
No, I know, and that's the problem. It's like they're not learning from their mistakes. Like it's Transformers, whatever. You've already done all that. You can keep the same people, whatever. G.I. Joes, you literally need to scrap the idea and redo the whole damn series.
Right. Yeah, you need to redo the whole thing, but anyways. I guess we can get more into it when we talk about the animated show, yes, which we will get into next week.
But anyways, guys, you know, we appreciate, you know, all the things that you guys do, you know, especially liking, following, and all that subscribing that you like to do, hopefully, and share it out to those local, you know, people of yours that wherever you guys live, whether you're in New Hampshire or, you know, anywhere around the world. Hopefully not somebody named Michael who likes to VPN and do all that stuff. Just kidding. Anyways, guys, we appreciate you. Until next time.
Stay geeky.